Hey guys, Joe from SimVRlabs here, and today we're going to talk about command creation. And so we're going to make a block heater for this 172 because we've created a scenario where it's hard to, it idles rough if it's cold out, so we can combat that before we ever get into it by putting a block heater on our aircraft, and that'll heat the temperature up until it's warm enough for you to start it. So I've kind of previewed this in the video before, and I showed you that you can make a menu with the buttons on them. Well, we're not going to do that yet. Okay, first we have to actually create the system. And so we're going to create commands. Now, if you're familiar at all with X-Plane and sort of under the hood how it works, you understand what commands are. But if you don't, a command is sort of like a bucket, right? It's sort of like a function that's just sitting there waiting to be called, right? And they look like, the actual syntax of it looks like a dataref almost, but it doesn't have a value associated to it. It's just a bucket with some predefined code in it. So think of commands as a bunch of buckets in like a field, right? And X-Plane is kind of like our big robot that's just waiting for you to call a command, and he'll run over to that bucket and run the code that's in it, right? And then that's pretty much what a command is. So we want to create two commands here, okay? One is turn the block heater on, and then the block heater will start warming up the cylinder head temperature at a predefined speed, and block heater off, which will kill that function, kill the heater, right? So let's get to it. Now, when you're creating a command, it's a new command. When you're creating a command, I find it infinitely easier to do it in X Lua instead of FlyWithLua. Can you do it in FlyWithLua? Absolutely. The deal is remember, X Lua is aircraft specific and doesn't look beyond that aircraft. FlyWithLua is system specific, and if you've created your command in such a way that other people have created another command that's calling the same stuff, you're going to get a conflict. So to avoid all that, we're going back to X Lua to do some aircraft specific stuff that'll never conflict with anybody else's code, right? So let's get to it. So I've created this block heater.lua, and you can see right here it's under block heater folder that's named the same as blockheater.lua, just like we showed you in the very first video. You got to name it the same. So the first thing you do, just like any Lua program, is you put the datarefs that you want to mess with at the top. So the dataref that we want to mess with and put into our bucket is the cylinder head temperature dataref, which we've already done before, right? So I can go in here to my Lua script. This is FlyWithLua, right? I can find the cylinder head temperature, and I'm just going to copy that over. Paste it here. Now, this is the FlyWithLua way of writing that out. We don't want that. I'm just putting this here so I know what this is, and I can copy and paste a little bit. To remember how to do this part in X Lua, you just pull up an X Lua script out of anywhere. And again, all the laminar things have them, and they all kind of start the same way. So I can look. I have a couple pulled up here, and it's the find dataref section. You'll notice that you got to make sure you pay attention to what it's doing. This is create dataref. We don't want to create a custom dataref. That's for another time in another video. We just want to do the find dataref stuff, right? So I'm just going to grab this one, copy and paste it over, and we'll make sure we fill this stuff out with what this is. So remember, this is where you actually put the name. So it's cht_temp. And then we want this dataref here to go here. And remember this 0 part, that's because it's an array dataref. Well, in X Lua and everything else, you make array datarefs like this with a closed bracket. So I want to make sure it's manipulating that array, right? So there we go. That is how it should look in X Lua. And now let's get started. So we want to create two buckets, two functions, two commands, on and off basically. So we'll say function give me a little more white space because some stuff's going to go outside of the bucket here. So function, and then let's call it block heater on. And normally we would just do that, right? Open and close. Well, when you're creating a command in XLUA, you have to do phase. You have to just write out phase, comma, and then duration. Now, we're not going to get quite into what this is yet. Just know that you have to do it. Also, what you have to do is when you name your function, it has to, the name that you call it has to be followed by a underscore command handler. Okay, this is the underscore command handler part is like a power function that's specific to XLUA, that's saying this is a command. This isn't just any old function. This is a command, right? So I think it's CMD handler. Okay, so the CMD is capitalized and the H is not. Now I can look under here. I can see create command. Let's see. Yeah, see, okay. This is how they did the 172. They called it 172 ignition down, and they underscore command handler. CMD is capitalized, right? That's what we're doing. CMD command handler phase duration, right? Now we've created our block heater on function, right? Now we just need to put some code in there to tell it what we want it to do. So the first thing you want to define inside of a command function is how the button is pressed, right? Or if it's not pressed, or if it's held down. So let me just comment out a block here, and I'll type this out for you. So phase equals 1. I'm sorry, phase equals 0 means that button is pushed. Now, what do you mean by button? Well, a command is a thing that can be assigned to a keyboard or a joystick button, right? So think of this as an assignable thing. If phase equals 0, that means you've pushed the button. You've pushed the button on your joystick, or you've hit the keyboard key once, and that's it. It's phase equals 0. Phase equals 1 means acts as if the button is held down. So if you assigned, let's see, what's a good one to? So if you assigned a command, like the command would be heading, autopilot heading bug up, right? So if you pushed the command once, it would go up 1 degree. So your heading bug is on 0. You push the command, you phase equals 0'd it. It would go from 0 to 1. If phase equals 1 and you hit the command, it would start rolling, right? It would just start going forward, right? As if you held it down, as if you held that button down, and it would just, keep rolling. Phase equals 2 acts as if you've released the button. Okay, does that make sense? So that would be how you would say, if the button is released, then do this. If the button is pushed, then do this. If the button is held down, then do this, right? So for this example, what we're doing is we are stepping up the cylinder head temperature by an arbitrary amount that we're going to set in a minute, and it's going to start rising the cylinder head temperature. Now, if I said 1, so if it's at 16 degrees, and I said I want to up it by 1, if I put here phase equals 0, so if I put here if phase equals 0, and then if I put all my cylinder head temperature code to step it up by that value, then when I went in there and I turned block heater on, it would only bump it up 1 time. And it would only bump it up, if I set my step value to only 1 degree, it would only bump it up 1 degree, and then it would stop. So I'd have to keep pushing the button to keep making the thing go up. So we want this to act as if it's held down. Well, which one acts as if it's held down? It's phase equals 1. So I'll go if phase equals 1, then if cylinder head temperature is less than, and now we have to figure out when we want this thing to stop, regardless of whether we stop it or not. So if you don't, it's gonna basically keep stepping it up until your infinite value high of temperature. We don't want that. So let's say we put a block heater on an engine. I'm gonna say it's gonna warm it to probably 90 degrees before it ever just can't warm it anymore, right? So you could get really codey with this, with math and stuff, and give it a value that's based on like the actual air temperature. And it's like, well, if it's like, you know, 15 degrees Fahrenheit out, then you can only get it up to about 50 degrees. But if it's 30 Fahrenheit out, you might be able to get it up to 75 degrees. We're not going to get that crazy with it. We're just going to say, look, the block heater is going to work until it warms the engine up to, let's say, 90 degrees. So if cylinder head temperature is less than 90, then I want cylinder head temperature to equal itself plus our step value, which I'm going to call this heater step. Right? And then we can end that, and then we can end that, and then we can end the function, right? I want to actually indent this more for readability. There we go. So if phase equals 1, which means if the button is pushed, then go ahead and up it by the step value. Now, what is the step value? Well, that's another thing we could put outside the bucket. So we've put, in videos past, we've put flags outside the bucket, which means, you know, true or false, is this happening? If it's happening, do this. If not, put the flag down and do something else. Or just don't do anything else. We've also put timers outside the bucket. Now we could put what's called step values outside the bucket. Step values are just the value that you want it to raise every time you do this command. So we'll say heater step equals, we'll call it 0.005, because we don't want it to rise too quickly and we don't want to rise too slowly. If you want this to rise quicker, raise this number. If you want it to rise slower, lower the number. But I think 0.005 is going to be pretty good, right? Now that's block heater on. We've created our block heater on command. Now the next thing to do is create a whole nother command called block heater off. And then underscore command handler, because we want to make sure that it's a command. And we'll go if phase equals 0. Now, why are we doing if phase equals 0? Because this is just something I want to click once. I don't need to hold down block heater off. And phase equals 2 means you've released the button, so we're not even, that's not even a thing. Phase equals 0 is the thing you'll probably use the most when you're creating commands. That's a one-time, the button's pushed, go and do this code kind of thing. So if phase equals 0, that means we've pushed the button block heater off. Then we want nothing else to happen other than cylinder head temp equals cylinder head temp. Right? That means, you know, stop this function. That just basically means quit doing this whole thing where cylinder head temp equals cylinder head temp plus heater step. Stop adding. Just leave it where it is, where you've left it. Right? So that's exactly what we're looking for there. And then end. And then end. Right? End the function. Now we've created our two functions. Okay. The next step here is to actually create the commands inside Xplane, which means these are going to be once we've done this next step, then when you've loaded up X-Plane, it's going to be in the joystick and in the keyboard menu as something that's assignable, right? So how do we do that? Well, again, we can go back to other XLUA things and just kind of grab them. So you can see here, this is the function they've made for ignition up, right? This is the command that they've made. They've done all this stuff just like we just did. And then down at the bottom, there's this thing where they put the create commands section. And this is the deal with the ignition up. This is what we kind of want it to look like, right? So let's copy and paste that, just so we don't have to type it out and we don't have any syntax errors and we don't forget what we're doing. We can just use, Laminar's code to code our own, right? So we can use this to do it. So we'll say block heater on equals create command. Now this part here is what I said looks kind of like a data ref. You have to create something separated by slashes that looks kind of like a data ref, right? This is what you would put. This is what other plugins and the cockpit OBJ and other things would call. This is what also you would see inside data ref tool, right? So we can just make our own. Just don't start it with the word sim. Okay, if you start it with the word sim, it's going to get combined with all the other default commands that are out there. So you want to name this something that's like custom. So we can call it I'll just call it I don't want to do SimVRlabs. Let's just do block heater / block heater _on, right? And then space comma, and this next part is what you want it to read inside the keyboard and joystick menu. So it just makes it easy for people to read, to know what the name of it is. So we'll just call it 172 block, or actually just call it block heater on, right, comma. And then this next section is what function up here are we calling? We're calling the block heater on command handler, right? That's the function that we're calling when this command gets called. So we'll call it block heater on command handler with a closed deal, right? Just like that. And that looks just like the one that they've put up in Laminar, and that is perfect. And then I'm going to copy, paste this here, and change my ons to off. Right, there we go. I'm going to save it, and that's it. So when you create a command in XLUA, it's super simple. Sorry about that, guys. I had to stop the video for a second, but I'm back in the fight here. So, yep, super simple. Just define your datarefs and register your commands. Now, when you get back into X-Plane, what I've done is I've restarted X-Plane. So you would have to restart to get X-Plane to register those commands, right? So that you can bind them to a key. So let's do that. So I go in here to keyboard, and there it is under block heater, right? Block heater on and off. Those are what we created in there, and I'll put on as B and off as V. And we will look at the data ref here just to make sure it's working. Data ref sim flight model engine. There it is, engine cylinder head temperature _C. That's the writable one, right? So if I hold down the B button. You see how it's rising? It's going up, which is awesome. Now if I let go, it's going to stop, right? Because we've got it as phase equals 1, right? Which means right now if you wanted to do it, you have to hold down the button. Now when we actually call this command in the menu, there's another power function that'll hold this button down for you. So all you got to do is click the button in the menu once, and it's going to hold this for you. Now we can set this to like 86, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm gonna make sure it stops at 90. So I'm gonna push and hold the button. It should reach 90 and then stop going up. So a few more seconds here, and like I said, you can change the speed of that by changing that heater step value that we said, but I think this is pretty good. Yep, so it goes up 90, and see how it tries to go up more but then just doesn't. So, and then it's gonna, when I let go and it's gonna fall, and that's an X-plane thing. It's trying to fall back to being cold because it's cold out, right? So that's pretty awesome. Alright, and that's about it. So that's how you create commands really easily in X Lua. And then the next video we're gonna make the menu, and we're gonna talk all about that. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll talk soon.